Hi guys, welcome back to my segment. I'm going to be going over two African American authors today, Mary Elizabeth Vroman and Maya Angelou. Both of these authors were written in a time where there was segregation, a lot of social injustice, and they both wanted to do their part to bring a message about that to the people, and they definitely depicted that in their writing. Maya Angelou was a film actor, a director, and a poet. She also wrote nonfiction novels. She was a civil rights activist, which kind of is where her background comes in, writing about what's going on to the African American people and the things that they had to go through. A lot of her writings also include what her own personal problems she had being African American woman in America, which is why those are her main themes of her topics. Mary Elizabeth Vroman was an Alabama school teacher. She went to school in Alabama, and being in the South, of course, she also had social injustice and she had a lot of problems to deal with that. So in her writing, she depicts the problem that she had being a school teacher in America when she had to teach colored people and not having the same support as the non-colored schools had. Maya Angelou wrote the story Steady Going Up, and it depicts this guy named Robert who's on a train going to pick up his little sister who became sick in college in Cincinnati. On the train, he encounters these two males who were white, and they are drunk, and they're constantly looking at him, giving him these weird looks. And there's also one other African American on the bus, and it is this older lady who becomes like a mother to him, grandmother, any type of like figure like that to him in this story. And she's basically just trying to keep him to her side and make sure he's okay, make sure he doesn't get into an altercation with these males that she also saw giving him these weird looks. But on the next stop, he ends up having to get off to go to the bathroom. And again, in the time of segregation, there was a colored bathroom and a non-colored bathroom. While he was in the bathroom, the two males come inside and they're all angry because he's African American and they don't like that he's trying to go to the north and ruin the things up there. So they try to get into a fight and they try to rough him up a little bit. But instead, Robert is able to overcome that and get behind the two men and out of the door after repeatedly hitting one male with the alcohol bottle and fighting with the other one. He does get back to the bus right in time for him to get to the train before it leaves, but the bus driver was like, where are the two males? And he doesn't know where they are, and he looked for them in the non-colored bathroom because they weren't colored in the cafe, and he couldn't find them, which is a little ironic because they are in the bathroom, but the colored bathroom, which he never thought to look at. And the story ends up with Robert being happy, as Angela says in her story. She says he knew she wanted to talk, but all he could think about was letting the bus get started and leaving those crazy men before they got a chance to call for help. And this is important because Robert knew if they were able to call for help, he would be in a lot of trouble because there is still criminal and social injustice which will hurt him. They will all be really upset even though he was the one being attacked. When it gets to See How They Run by Mary Elizabeth Vroman, we see a school teacher named Mrs. Richards, and she's teaching a class of 43 students, and she's a colored teacher teaching a colored class, obviously. And in this class, she has a whole range of students. They're all diverse, some poor, some rich, some just in the middle, and she really just wants to be a better teacher. This is her first year teaching, and she just wants to give these students another chance that they never really had before. She takes a special interest in two students, Tanya and CT. Tanya got sick during the school year, and Mrs. Richards actually raised money for her to get the doctor, but unfortunately she ended up dying from diphtheria in Christmas time. And CT is one student that Mrs. Richards actually really tried her best to help. She went through a phase where he was very angry, he didn't want her help, he was very disobedient, and he ended up getting a beating from another teacher because he was so disobedient. And then she finally found something that interested him, something that allowed him to actually want to come to school and learn, and actually want to try, and actually feel like he can do it, and ended up being able to help him get past the third grade without having to repeat as he had to do for his previous grades. The teacher was very patient with her students. She did everything that she could, teaching such a large amount of students, and she was able to pass her entire third grade class. Ms. Richards did her best, but even though it was her first year, she ended up realizing that she just needed to go back to her husband, and although she made a difference, which is what she wanted to do, it's not something that she wanted to continue doing. In the end, she tells the students as she's handing them their passing grades She says, "The knife of the farmer's wife is double-edged for you because you are Negro children, born mostly in poverty. But you are wonderful children, nevertheless, for you wear the bright protective cloak of laughter, the strong shield of courage, and the intelligence of children everywhere." She was very happy that she was able to help these students, and that's basically the entire novel. She just wants to be a good teacher, just as Mary Elizabeth Roman was an Alabama school teacher in the South as well. Both of these authors did a really good job including their own problems and the society problems into their stories. They're very similar, especially with the background of social injustice in their stories. And it actually reminded me of a poem that my class read in class called Flowers by Alice Walker, another African American author who wrote a poem that included a background with hanging and another racial problem that we had. I do highly recommend that you read these short stories, Steady Going Up by Mary Elizabeth Roman, and See How They Run. Steady Going Up by Maya Angelou and See How They Run by Mary Elizabeth Roman. They were very well written, very good at describing what happened to each of the characters and how they've all played out, and it's very eye-opening about the racial issues that we had. I do hope you enjoyed the segment we did today, and I hope to see you next time.